Watching Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Darrio Melton. He is the House Democratic Party Caucus Chair in the Alabama House of Representatives. Sir, I thank you for joining us. I want to speak with you about health care. We know that Alabama, its healthcare outcomes are not that strong when compared to the rest of the nation. At this stage, though, the state has decided against accepting the Medicaid expansion as part of the Affordable Care Act. What do you make of that decision of your state?
Well, we have many problems, many challenges here in the state. We are a very obese state. We don't practice good habits in regards to eating. Not to expand Medicaid is to do what many of our fundamental principles are totally say opposite. Many of us, we tout that we're Christians, we believe in biblical teachings, and Jesus said, when I was sick, you came to see about me. And we have many people in this state who's sick. So to refuse to expand Medicaid is a refusal to acknowledge Christ in our midst.
So why is that happening? Because when I think about the leaders in the Alabama legislature, they seem to be people of faith. They seem to accept the teachings. And yet, they also seem to be very firm in their opposition to the expansion. The state Senate has gone on record, at least the Republican caucus, opposing the expansion, when there are plenty of other, quote, red states that have accepted the expansion, albeit with certain waivers, but they ultimately accepted the expansion. What do you see happening?
Well, to say why they are principles that they abide by, we should know them by their fruit. We don't see the fruit they're showing us, say they do not abide by those principles. We are putting politics over people. And anytime in leadership, it should never be about politics. It should be about the people. We've been elected to serve people in this great state. And that's what we're trying to make sure that those in leadership focus on.
But what would you say to those that express the following concern? Sure, we can accept the Medicaid expansion today, and the federal government will pay 100%. But you know, as part of the expansion, that number decreases to 90% and then to 80%. And that is a legitimate concern, arguably. How do you respond to those that say, you know, it's a bill of goods that's going to cost us money in the end?
Well, in the meanwhile, we accept federal money for transportation and other things that we accept federal money for. We just use the federal government when it benefits us politically. For those who would make the argument that it will decrease over years, well, right now, for every dollar that we spend towards Medicaid, the federal government roughly matches $3. So we already have almost a 33 to 66% split already. So to have that argument is a weak argument. I believe our main concerns as leaders are to make sure that people's needs are being addressed. When we are making sure people are healthy, they're able to go to work, get better jobs, and able to live more healthier lifestyles, and would decrease the need for some of these services that we have.
As you know, the governor, a Republican himself, has created what's known as the Alabama Healthcare Improvement Task Force. He's appointed 38 members. Some of his detractors believe that this is the governor's way to get an independent task force to support the expansion of Medicaid. So he'll be able to take cover and say, I'm just listening to the task force. What do you make of that?
I think part of leadership is being able to stand out front and be able to take the hits that comes with whatever decision that you make, not to hide behind any task force. If we're serious about leading, we need to lead. But sometimes you have to stand alone as a leader. In
the end, though, it could be a net plus. I mean, he can point fingers all he wants, but if it leads to the expansion, is that the end game that's desired?
That's the end game. But in the meanwhile, while we're playing politics, people are suffering, they're dying. So it's my hope that we'll stop playing politics and move forward and go ahead and expand Medicaid. I'm with the governor in regards to seeing him leaning towards that way.
Right.
But the timing is of essence, and we need to make sure that we don't lose another life because of the politics that we're putting before people.
So where do you go from here? You have a governor who arguably seems favorably inclined to the expansion. I don't know if he'd say that if I had him in this chair, but there seems to be a suggestion plenty of his Republican colleagues throughout the nation have gone forward with the expansion, either creating it through public private pass-throughs, I should say, so the money is going to private entities. Is that the compromise that we need to look at?
Well, you know, in Alabama, we have always touted on being last in everything that is good, unfortunately.
Okay.
I think that we need to get to a place that we're just doing what's right by the people, to put these different mechanisms in place so you won't take a political hit from it. Again, it's not leadership. The people of Alabama is looking for true leadership. Leadership that said, regardless if it's Democrat or Republican, they just want someone who cares about the people and more than they do about the parties.
I want to ask about another element that continues to divide the parties, and that's the question of the minimum wage. As you know, President Obama had pushed for an increase in the minimum wage nationally. We haven't seen one, I don't think during his years in office. I know President Bush signed one. We have not seen a federal increase. We know many states have been marching forward, increasing their minimum wage, and even some cities have gone on their own to increase their own minimum wage. I mean, some as high as $15, Seattle, Los Angeles. There are some cities in Alabama that are looking at increasing the minimum wage. There are some legislators in Alabama that are looking to prevent cities from increasing the minimum wage. Talk to us about the minimum wage and how it's playing out in Alabama.
Well, for the last 2 years, we have sponsored legislation to increase the minimum wage here in the state of Alabama. I think what is important for people to understand, number one, we're one of 5 states that do not have a state minimum wage.
You play off of the federal one.
When
Alabama.
it benefits us, usually Alabama is anti-federal government. But on this issue, the federal government benefits us, so we're going to do away with the federal government. That's the political jargon that we hear so often. But we're challenging our colleagues to first, let's get a state minimum wage. The bill that we had would take our minimum wage, or give us a state minimum wage of $9.80, that would take us up 3 tiers, that will go up by 85 cents over 3 years.
And that is above the federal minimum wage.
Exactly.
What are your friends on the Republican side of the aisle saying to this?
Well, off record, everybody thinks we need to increase the wage, but politically, no one has the willpower to stand out there.
Why?
Again, I can't answer for them in regards to why, but off record, I've heard many of my colleagues say they agree with the principle that we need to increase the minimum wage because people cannot live off $7.25 an hour.
What about creating coalitions with the business community? I have to think there are some in the business community that would support increasing the minimum wage. I mean, we know that to be the case throughout the nation. Are you seeing allies in the business community on this question?
Well, many of our businesses, small businesses, and I thank God for our small businesses, they're already paying more than minimum wage. We're trying to set a standard across the board that if you have a business here in Alabama and throughout the United States, you should be able to live off where you work. And unfortunately, we have too many people are getting paid slave wages now. They're on welfare. And we have on one end, we criticize those individuals on welfare, but at the same time, we're paying them slave wages. We can't have it both ways. I think we can alleviate a lot of the problems that we have here in the state if we increase the wages that we have.
Is there a way to use that argument to your advantage? I mean, when you think about your friends on the Republican side, their desire is to create a sense of self-sufficiency, of personal responsibility. That's the lingo that we hear. And so if you can create a scenario whereby if you pay more, these folks won't need state aid for Medicaid.
Exactly.
For example,
exactly.
They won't need to be part of the Medicaid expansion.
Exactly.
We won't even need an expansion. And so is that a way to try to craft the argument?
Well, we've been trying to craft it that way. Of course, it's very difficult because when you go into a conversation and the conversation begins with no, it's kind of difficult to be heard. And that's what we've been battling. When we publicly try to talk about this, it's no from the back.
What about the governor? I mean, could he be an ally on this? He is supporting, at this stage, increase in taxes, which is a bold move for a conservative Republican. Is he an ally you can reach out and hope to bring into the camp?
Well, the governor did tell me at the beginning of the session that he would look at supporting an increase, but of course that would have to come from the legislature. And again, the will in the legislature has not been to pass a bill that we've had. Also, there's been some local bills to allow an increase in local areas, and the legislature has been adamant opposing those bills as well. So I guess until it comes through us, the governor really don't have a say-so.
His name is Darrio Melton. He is the House Democratic Caucus Chair in the House of Representatives. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter Local Edition.